Welcome in, latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. Go by SEC Mike on the Twitters. And there he is, everybody's favorite on-time guest, Stephen Lassan, senior editor over at Athlon Sports. Just kidding, Stephen. Everybody's allowed one here.
I appreciate that, my friend. Apologize to all the cousins for running a little bit behind schedule today. But, man, I am fired up for this weekend. I don't know about all the cousins out there, but two massive showdowns. We're getting into that range where you start to look at the playoff rankings and see what these games mean. Not to mention we got all the coaching stuff still going on. So, man, there is never a dull moment in the SEC, and that is certainly the case as we come down the home stretch.
Yeah, and you've already called this, I believe, a little separation Saturday. So Steven's going to give us his predictions for all the games. He's going to give us some prize pick selections. We're going to talk some playoff rankings. And we've got some updated coaching odds I wanted to throw your way briefly here, Steven, as we got a lot to cover. But as always, got to remind the cousins we're brought to you by MyBookie, the online sports book. So, hey, you may want to listen to Steven. He's in the lead here this season total. No one's better. Not the cousins, not me, of course, not Shane. So listen to what Steven's got to say with his picks and run on over to mybookie.ag. And don't forget, most importantly, that promo code SEC to get you a guaranteed match wager of up to $500 over at MyBookie. So, Steven, now that you're in the lead, how nervous are you that you can't blow this? You've been trying to get here. It's taken you 12 weeks to get here, but you're finally here.
I know there's a ton of pressure, isn't it? It's like I got to finish the job. I can't have like a collapse in the second half like we've seen some teams do this year around the SEC. But yeah, there is a little bit of a disadvantage because I got to go first every week. So if you try to make up some ground, you could pick differently and maybe try to catch up a game or two, right?
Well, that's true, but clearly that's not helped us to this point, Steven, so I don't know how much of an advantage it is, but I was hoping you didn't put that together.
Well, I give you the benefit of the doubt. You're a smart guy. Your prediction last week of Kentucky over Florida was good, so I'm sure we're going to disagree a time or two on the predictions this week, but man, I think looks like, judging by the race and the standings, Mike, it looks like it's going to come down to the wire. Much like Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss fighting for one of those spots in the SEC championship game.
Right, and I'm glad you said that was a good upset pick by me because literally every upset pick I had crashed and burned. So at least you gave me the credit for the one I did get. You know what?
See, I don't think about the ones you got wrong. I think about the ones you got right. See?
No, everybody they think about the ones I got wrong. Trust me, I'm well aware of it. I haven't had one Kentucky fan say, "Hey, good job with that one." You know what?
Yeah, it is funny how that works, isn't it? It's like it's the ones that you get wrong in a prediction. Everybody remembers those, but any of them you get right, just forget about those and throw them out the window. So, I'd like to go have a perfect week. I don't think we've had. I don't know if I've had one of those this year, or maybe I had one or two, but that was when the schedule was a little easier.
Well, you know who's not had a perfect week, and they never do, Steven? These damn playoff committee people. So what was your thoughts? Anybody that missed it, I'm sure every one of you has seen it by now, but Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, A&M 3, Bama 4, Georgia 5, Texas Tech 6, Ole Miss 7. Ole Miss dropped the spot despite winning by 50. Oregon 8, Notre Dame 9. We got Texas 10 and Miami 11, South Florida 12, and Oklahoma just on the outside looking in. They're the first team out. What was your thoughts, Stephen, on the playoff reveal here?
Mike, I think there was some intrigue for me at the top to see if Texas A&M would pass Indiana. Not surprised that the committee kept Indiana at 2. I think the bottom line is if you're a Texas A&M fan and you're frustrated and you think you should be 2, just hang on because Indiana's got to get Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game if they win out. If Texas A&M keeps winning out, eventually they're going to be 2. If Indiana knocks off Ohio State, maybe if Michigan beats Ohio State beats Indiana, maybe Texas A&M could get that 1 seed. So there's a lot to play for Texas A&M. I always say this, Mike, I wouldn't get my blood pressure up over these rankings going into week 12 because, man, there is so much that's going to change. But I do want to draw your attention to the teams that are 10 through 18 in the standings. And these are kind of the chaos agents. And this starts with Texas at 10, Oklahoma at 11. You look at Vanderbilt 14, Miami's 15, USC and Michigan are at the bottom of that 17 and 18. I bring those up because how many teams the SEC gets into the field is probably going to hinge on what could happen in this range, because you see BYU and Utah in there as well. Is there a second Big 12 team that gets in there that takes a spot away potentially from a fifth SEC team? A team like Miami that for some reason moved up over Georgia Tech, even though they had kind of a performance against Syracuse. Must have been a really bad week of practice for Georgia Tech. That's why they dropped below Miami. But USC gets a shot at Oregon. Michigan gets a shot at Ohio State. So what I'm getting at is like when I see the teams at the top, if I'm Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, you're not locked in, but you feel pretty good. And if you're wondering where we start to get some of this conversation about, okay, can Texas win out? Can Oklahoma win out? Do they get in at 9-3? What does it mean for Vanderbilt? It's that 10 to 18 range. Keep an eye on USC, Oregon next week, Michigan, Ohio State, those Big 12 teams. That's where you want to start to turn your focus to, because the teams at the top are starting to play their way into a lock, and it's where the next kind of chaos comes from. It's that 10 to 18 range.
Well, it's all interesting, Stephen, but like you said, who cares? I mean, we got games to play, and it'll all work itself out, hopefully. I love Brett Venables. I know the fans don't have access to this, but the SEC coaches teleconference, I just got off it, Stephen, and Coach Brent Venables was asked about, there's teams ahead of you that have the same or similar record, and you've got a significantly better strength of schedule. I thought this was strength of schedule was going to be factored in this year. And instead of making excuses, instead of saying, yeah, we should be here, we should be there, you know what Coach Brent Venables said? He said, hey, we put ourselves in this position. We had opportunities to win the games we lost, and he didn't come right out and say this part, but hey, they beat Alabama, they're right back in. So he knows that the Sooners are where they are because they dropped a game or two that maybe they feel like they shouldn't have, and if they keep winning, it'll work itself out. So I kind of like that attitude rather than, man, we should be here, we should be there. Just all you got to do is keep winning. You know what?
Yeah, absolutely. I subscribe to that theory that it's all going to work itself out, because when you start to look at the schedule for the next couple of weeks, especially in the SEC, Mike, with Texas playing Georgia, Oklahoma, Alabama, what happens in the rivalry games with Texas, Texas A&M, Georgia, Georgia Tech, there's a lot of meat still on the bone to figure out how this SEC and playoff race is going to shape up. So, I mean, if you're Oklahoma and you're sitting there at 11, if you win this weekend and you win out, you're in. So it's all there in front of them. I mean, I thought you were almost going to go spot the ball. Like, let's get it on in Tuscaloosa this weekend, but it's all there. If Oklahoma wins out, they're in. And there's also no shame in the losses that Oklahoma has to Texas and Ole Miss. I mean, 2 top 10 teams. So they are in this position, but Mike, they have a chance to play their way in, and it starts this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, teams that don't have a spot or an opportunity to play their way in are the teams that fired their coaches, and that's exactly why, because a lot of these programs got playoff aspirations, and they're nowhere near it. So I just wanted to, we revealed these with Shane on the last episode, but I wanted to get your quick thoughts on Florida, where once again Lane Kiffin trending to be the next Florida coach based on the odds. And again, I caution everyone, don't read too much into these odds. They don't, there's limits. I think you could only bet like $50 on it. Like you really can't even put that much money on it. So take these for what they're worth. But does it surprise you at all, Stephen, that Lane Kiffin, last week he was minus 150, now he's minus 300, which means he, according to the betting odds, for what that's worth, he's trending into the direction to be the next head coach there at Florida. Does that surprise you at all?
It doesn't really surprise me a ton, Mike. I think when you just think about from the start, he's been at the top of the board on every list as a potential favorite, top candidate. I do think, like you said, you take these with a grain of salt. If you look at some of the past odds and coaching searches, they haven't necessarily been proven true. But I think if you just asked, most people around the sport, they would probably say, if you want to connect the dots, Kiffin is the favorite at Florida. Perhaps he could even be the favorite at LSU. Doesn't mean he's going to take the job. I just think if you're trying to predict where this coaching carousel is going to go, Kiffin to Florida has always been the easiest one, with, again, the full caveat that he may not even take the job, and that he does seem to be pretty happy and committed in Oxford, as we saw him help out that proposal last week.
Yeah, we got reporters asking his son now about his. Albie, come on, people, what are we doing here? We can't. Let's be a little bit more professional than that. Hell, if I'm preaching to be professional, we got real problems over here. You know what?
Well, I was going to say it's better than following some,
That's also true.
Yeah.
Speaking of these crazy odds, Steve, it's LSU odds. Now, this is the one that really caught people's attention. Nick Saban, the betting favorite to be the next LSU coach, more than Lane Kiffin, more than Joe Brady. So, again, I caution you, does this mean Nick Saban is going to be the next coach? No. But what's your reaction to Nick Saban being the odds-on favorite today to be the next LSU coach?
Mike, I think the fact that Nick Saban is listed as the favorite ought to tell you that to take these odds with a grain of salt. I'm sure you saw, Mike, the video of Nick Saban getting his birthday cake, and he was like sitting in the recliner. He's got the Bills and Chiefs on. He's got his dog. He's got the blanket on. He's like all of us, right? We're just trying to watch some ball, stay warm, spend time with the dog. That didn't look like a guy that's going to be on the sidelines of LSU next year. So I would be really surprised if Nick Saban comes back. I do think when you look further down the list, obviously Lane Kiffin is the biggest domino in the coaching searches, whether it's at Florida, whether it's at LSU. I would be really surprised if Dan Lanning left Oregon. He's made that pretty clear during this season that he's staying at Oregon. It'd be quite the role reversal if he decided to leave. Which I think gets into that interesting conversation of somebody like a John Sumrall, who's at 10-1, Clark Lee at 5-1. Not necessarily saying that those guys are going to be taking this job, but those are some interesting names down this list, I think.
Mm-hmm. No, what I wanted you to do there, Stephen, is demand that Nick Saban, he's going to be the next coach, and he's going to shake up, and they're going to be tearing down his statues there in Alabama. I mean, how glorious would that be? You know what?
Man, that would be so glorious to see him come back at LSU, wouldn't it? It just, I mean, as if the SEC needed some more, entertainment and more spice on a Saturday. Back on the sidelines and play, of course, his old team. I mean, you talk about improving the coaching quality of the league immediately. That's one way to do it, right?
I mean, unless he goes down there and wins a bunch of national championships, it's going to be a complete failure. Not Bill Belichick level failure, but I could even, again, this is not going to happen, but even if it did, I don't envision it would be the smashing success people would assume it would be.
That's it. It's interesting. I mean, I think in a hypothetical world, I think it'd be a very short-term deal, maybe like a 3-year deal or something like that.
You're right.
Also, for a guy that really wasn't the fan of NIL and transfer portal, it'd be kind of awkward to come back when it's maybe getting worse to manage. So it would be really surprising. But also, I think to your point is if you didn't like those things and you found it harder to build a program, the standard is national championship, and just getting to the playoff is probably not going to be good enough. So I still think it'd be a long shot for him to come back. But if you want to talk about just pure entertainment value, yeah, let's do it, right?
Now, how about Auburn? So, again, John Sumrall is the odds-on favorite, but DJ Durkin's making a move, James Franklin making a move. Any thoughts on this? Do you think, do you like John Sumrall better than any of these other candidates? And this is a long list of candidates here for Auburn.
I think John Sumrall should be the top coach that Auburn goes after. It just makes a lot of sense. And I think him being the betting favorite, I think kind of solidifies where the public is on this one. I'd be surprised, I guess, if DJ Durkin is the hire, especially considering his history at Maryland and getting fired there. I think I honestly think it'd be bad for Auburn to hire him as the head coach. Kenny Dillingham also has said that he's staying at Arizona State. There was some reporting behind the scenes. So I think and also to talk about Jeff Brom for a second, because he's probably a name that Florida would be after. It sounds like Louisville's working on a contract extension based upon some reporting from On3. today. So I think when you start to look at those names, it just seems like John Summerall is the logical fit, but also the coach that just, makes the most sense given his track record to be the next head coach at Auburn.
More sense than Gus Malzahn?
Yes.
I mean,
What are we going to do? Wind back the carousel? Malzahn at Auburn, Saban at LSU,
Les Miles is available. Can we get him in here?
Urban to Florida? We can run it back, right?
All right, then last but not least here, Arkansas, the betting favorite, Ryan Silverfield. But hey, the fans are hopeful, Stephen, that James Franklin will pick the Hogs. And any thoughts on these updated Arkansas coaching odds?
Mike, it does feel like James Franklin in Arkansas is the one coaching search that you keep, or the name that you see tied the most to Arkansas. So I'm not surprised that he and Silverfield are at the top of this board. I think the interesting thing with Franklin is there another job? Perhaps it's Florida. Perhaps it's a Florida State that hasn't come open yet. Is there a reason that his name has been out there so much for some of these jobs, like the Arkansas one, in the sense of maybe he's putting some pressure on a job like a Florida State or somewhere else that he might want? So I don't, I keep seeing that. So I definitely think there's a lot of smoke, but at the same time, it does feel like if you get past Silverfield and Franklin, it does feel pretty wide open, doesn't it?
Unless, Steven, I just saw it in the comments. I think it was cousin Bo. No, it was shout out Willie. Mike Gundy. Come on. I've wanted that guy in the SEC for a long time, but I think he's past his prime.
Yeah, a guy another guy that didn't really embrace NIL and the transfer portal. Like 10 years ago, probably would have made a big difference for Arkansas. I think he's probably outdated, an outdated hire at this point.
Could Brian Kelly take any of these jobs? He's probably a little too busy. He's got his hands full with the LSU lawsuit, it sounds like.
I think I would be surprised, I think, if Brian Kelly resurfaces in the SEC. I think it's more likely to maybe go like Big Ten or ACC somewhere. I think just given how much he felt like an outsider in the SEC, it probably feels unlikely he would go to a place like Arkansas, right?
He's taking the family to Northwest Arkansas. I couldn't see it.
It just seems very awkward, much like the fit at LSU. If you couldn't win at LSU, I think Arkansas is a harder job. And given the fit questions, I think that's a really tough ask for Brian Kelly. Now, Brian Kelly, Michigan State head coach, I could see that if they make a change.
Hey, someone's asking about Brian Daboll, which again, he was. I don't know if you're aware of this, Stephen, but I was told when he was at Bama, basically they told him they didn't fire him, but they basically said, take another job or you're getting fired. I don't think he was much of a college coach. Now he had some success. Again, you're working with Alabama players. Nick Saban was your head coach. It's kind of hard to tank that, but he was encouraged to leave. He left, and he's obviously had. I know he just got fired, so everybody's like, "Oh, he can't coach at all." Well, it's pretty damn hard to become an NFL head coach. You're not a dummy if you land that kind of position. But if maybe not even him, but could you see any kind of like NFL, probably not head coaches, but coordinators taking jobs like these, or does the timing with the portal and the recruiting, does that kind of make that very difficult to do?
That's a really good question because, I think the ultimate X factor in all of this is if you are like a program like LSU or Florida and Ole Miss makes the playoff, are you willing to wait to at least make your pitch to Lane Kiffin in January? And that would mean missing the early signing period. It would mean missing the transfer window, potentially opens up January the 2nd. Is it important to get it right, or is it important to have a head coach in place? Maybe he's not your number one candidate, but if he's a tier 2 candidate you feel good about, that's going to be an interesting question here. I do think as far as NFL names, haven't seen a ton for some of these jobs. Joe Brady's one that's come up for LSU. I personally, I think they should probably pick somebody else. I mean, he's kind of on the hot seat now with the Buffalo Bills. And Brian Dable, of course, was with the Bills, and those names have been kind of connected. So Mike, I'd be kind of surprised just given the timing of this. Maybe Oklahoma State is one that's been mentioned because Zach Robinson was a former quarterback there. He's the OC with the Falcons. I'd still be surprised if there's a lot of them. I think timing of this favors college coaches on the move here.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, we got a lot to get to, so let's move to our great sponsor, the PrizePicks. Maybe you're not into wagering on the games. You can wager on some daily fantasy over at PrizePicks. So go check them out, prizepicks.com, promo code SEC. You play 5, you get 50 over at PrizePicks. So Stephen, he loves fantasy football. He's nailing these PrizePicks selections. What type of PrizePicks selections do you have heading into this week in the SEC?
Mike, let's start with rushing yards, and let's go to College Station. Reuben Owens is at 62.5. I'd like him to go on the more than side. And also, on the rushing side of this, Mike, I am going to take Jaden Baugh at 59.5. And you may say, well, look at that spread. It's pretty crazy. There is a little bit of concern that maybe Florida just this game gets out of hand. Florida doesn't keep pace. But I think if Florida's going to turn this into a 4-quarter game, you got to be able to run the ball. And also on Reuben Owens, South Carolina is 14th in the SEC against the run. So I think 62.5 for Reuben Owens and Jaden Baugh, 59.5. I'm taking the more than side on both of those. Do you like those, Mike?
Yeah, no, I really do. Especially late in the seasons, get a little bit colder. It's a little bit harder to throw the football. Particularly you want to say A&M, I would imagine they're just trying to shorten this one. You don't want to fool around, less turnovers. I mean, you can still turn the ball over fumbling the football, but it's almost like, man, if you get a 10, 14-point lead, I think they'll be aggressive, but I can't imagine they're going to throw it 40 times in this football game, if that makes sense. And now, could Florida? Perhaps, if they get down. But again, their quarterback situation's so up in the air, and DJ's throwing all these picks. If it's not DJ, it's Tramel Jones, true freshman. They're not going to ask him, I wouldn't think, to go out there and air it out, given all the injuries they have at receiver in Gainesville. So, yeah, I like both these selections.
Let me throw a few receiving ones your way and see if we agree. Let's start with the Georgia-Texas game. How about Oscar Delp? He's at 16.5. I think you can get more than on that one. I think you're just talking a couple plays, in a game where yards might be hard to come by, battles at the line of scrimmage, maybe a couple short passes to your tight end kind of gets you to 30, 40 yards. So I think Oscar Delp at 16.5 is pretty attractive. I'm also going to take the more than side on Caden Lee. He's at 32.5. Feels like to me Florida secondary is pretty gettable for this Ole Miss passing game. It's kind of like who do you think's going to go off this week for the Ole Miss receiving core? 32.5 is gettable, I think, especially when you look at kind of Caden Lee's last couple games. He's been over that mark in I think 2 out of the last 3. And then I'm going to take Ryan Williams. Big game Ryan Williams maybe here. 53.5. You could maybe take Jeremy Bernard. He's at 63.5, but Mike, it feels like one of these receivers for Alabama is going to hit a big play or two. And I'm going to bank on Ryan Williams being that guy, especially at 53.5.
Yeah, no, I could see all those for sure. I'm trying to think. Yeah, because it was Lawson Lucky, right? They got a little banged up for Georgia. So, yeah, Oscar Delp, I would imagine he's going to be kind of our go-to tight end in this matchup. Gunner's probably going to – of course, Bubba loves throwing those screens, doesn't he, out to the receivers? Yeah. So, I mean, that'll be a fact. But my point being, I was going to say they're probably, against Texas, they're probably going to want to get it out of Gunner's hands quickly. So that kind of favors tight ends, favors those screens. Of course, you got to set up the screens. So, Yeah, I like that. I'm interested now. Ryan Williams and Ty Simpson, they seem to have a really good rapport of all their receivers. And is there a reason you're kind of zeroed in on him?
It's hard, it's almost hard. Just a feeling almost. It's like, in a big game against Oklahoma, which receiver can hit a big play? And I think he could do that. Now, certainly Bernard's at 63.5, Mike. And so if you feel good about maybe that side of things, I can't really disagree. I think I love Oklahoma's defense, but I do think when you look at what's happened this season, like Tennessee and Ole Miss, both and Texas too, the best offense that they played have been able to move the ball a little bit through the air. So it feels like Simpson and Williams, yes, the pass rush, yes, the time to throw is going to be an issue, but it does feel like, okay, if one of these times things break down, Simpson can hit a big play, maybe it's Ryan Williams on the other end of that. And that's kind of why I'm going with him, is just kind of trust that they hit one of those big plays.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you. I trust you, Steven. I'm not doubting you. I'm just asking if that makes sense.
I like it. See, you make me think about all of our prize pick selections. I'm always nervous every week to give these out, and it's, we've been fairly successful, right?
All right, you got any other prize picks selections for us?
Mike, I think that's it. I think 5 pretty solid plays this week. The quarterback numbers, some of the running back numbers with the committees and the matchups, I think just kind of stay away from right now.
Okay, no, I think that's fair. I also think, Steven, it is more than fair to give a shout out to some of our legends, like Steven Up. I think he already left. Sorry, Steven Up, for taking a minute to get here, but we do appreciate you.
Always showing up for them boys in Tuscaloosa. It's Steven Up. Roll Tide.
Thank you, Steven Up. He gifted Canister. I hope I'm saying that right. Canister, welcome to
the family.
Yeah, an SEC Sean. He's becoming one of our favorites over here. He gifted 5 memberships, Steven, to Dan Saul, Rink Q588, The Real Sniper. Don't get on his bedside. Ben Harmon and Bama 3891. Welcome to
the family.
And then the legend, Cousin JR.
The legend, Cousin JR, has done it again.
Thank you, JR. He gifted Scott Stevens. Scott, welcome to
the family.
Thank you, Stephen, for the assist here. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. The week 12. It's hard to believe we're at week 12 already here, Stephen. But week 12 SEC predictions. And we're going to start, as we always do, with the cupcake games. Shout out to Kentucky Wild. What? Yeah, it used to be, if you're playing Kentucky, it's a cupcake. Now, how the turntables have turned here. We got Kentucky. I actually do got a spread on this one, believe it or not, Stephen. 20.5 point favorite over undefeated Tennessee Tech. Over under 52.5. 1:30 Eastern on SEC Network Plus. Good luck watching this game. But thoughts on this one, Stephen, as Kentucky's won 2 in a row. Again, Tennessee Tech's won 10 in a row. Of course, they play in lower level here. But what's your thoughts?
Mike, I did see there was some momentum. I mean, not Mark Stoops momentum. I saw there was like some momentum earlier today for the YouTube and ESPN thing, but you know how those greedy people are. They're going to take forever. So let's hope we can all watch it this weekend. But you asked me on Monday, Mike, to do some homework. So I'm come prepared with some Tennessee Tech knowledge. So, Mike, Tennessee Tech is number 6 in the FCS top 25. They're obviously, we talked about it on Monday. Their head coach is Bobby Wilder. He's a former FBS head coach at Old Dominion. He's got the Tennessee Tech team playing well. Number 1 in the FCS in scoring offense. Number 1 at the FCS level in rush defense, and number 4 in scoring defense. They also they're also close to the top of the FCS in tackles for loss. They have 90 this season. So pretty active front. They can score. Their quarterback is a transfer from Eastern Washington. It is Kakoa Visparis, who is very good as a dangerous dual threat quarterback. So I tell you all that because you asked me to give you a little bit of intel on Tennessee Tech. Now, let me tell you what I'm focused on in this game is that, Tennessee Tech, obviously undefeated, probably dangerous because they are one of the top FCS teams. This is a significant step up, though, in competition. They have not played a, power conference team this year. to give you some comparison, they lost 48-3 to Georgia last season. Now it's different team, different players, but it kind of gives you an idea. It's an uphill battle. One set of power ratings put them about 121 if you were to combine the FCS and the FBS level. So kind of a team that's probably worse than Eastern Michigan. So there you go. So Mike, I tell you all that to tell you, Kentucky's motivated. They're chasing down that bowl game. They got Vanderbilt and Louisville after this. So just keeping those bowl hopes alive. I think they're going to do it. I think McGowan and Cutter Boley, I think they ensure that Kentucky does not have a terrible loss and in the bowl hopes. So also, I do think Tennessee Tech, with the thinking of the FCS playoffs, would they sit anybody? Thinking about what might happen there. I just think Kentucky's a better team. I need to take care of business. Give me the Wildcats 34, Tennessee Tech 13. They can, and Kentucky continues that momentum from the last couple weeks.
And perhaps, Stephen, again, not because of this game specifically, but we'll see how the rest of the season plays out for Kentucky, where they play Vanderbilt and Louisville to close out, needing 2 wins to make a bowl game. But perhaps, Stephen, this is a case to be made that if things continue to trend in the right direction, for maybe not having the knee-jerk reaction, to not firing the coach when it could have been very easy to do. And obviously, I think the buyout saved him. But, that South Carolina game in particular was disastrous. The coaching decisions at the end of Texas, and certainly I don't suggest they should have fired him after losing by 3 in overtime to Texas, but there was plenty of upset fans. We ran it up the gut twice for nothing in overtime. Tennessee was disastrous. So, a case to be made perhaps for a little bit of patience. And I'm not saying everybody deserves patience, but maybe your all-time winningest coach deserves a little patience.
It certainly seems like the mood has changed quite a bit, doesn't it? From a couple weeks ago. I think sitting here at 4-5, if you want to make the case for Mark Stoops to get another season, is it has been like, hey, late season momentum, they still got a chance to go to a bowl. If they go to a bowl game, I think he's definitely coming back. The other side of this is, Mike, when you look at their wins, Toledo, Eastern Michigan, an Auburn team, and a Florida team that might have packed it in, there's enough there if you want to make the argument that, hey, the program's still kind of stuck in this 4, 5, 6 win range. But if you go out and win the last 3, you get to 7-5, you just blew all the expectations out of the water. So I agree with you on the patience front, but I also, when I'm thinking about Kentucky for next season, there is going to be there's going to be some roster turnover. If you can keep Cutter Boley in the fold, if nothing else, maybe the end of season showed that Stoops can adapt, and especially in this new era of college football, and they can go out and do it again this offseason and go from 5, 6 wins to maybe punching to 7 or 8 next year. So I think, given his track record, he probably deserves a little bit of patience, but I also understand in October why the patience was running out too, especially after last season.
Yeah. Well, my patience of talking Kentucky is run thin as well, Stephen. So let's get to a real team. Them Tennessee Vols, Stephen, facing off against New Mexico State. Tennessee favored by 40.5 total points, over under 61.5 total points. 4:15 Eastern on SEC Network. Stephen, don't you dare pick New Mexico State to win this game.
Mike, this is not your older brother's New Mexico State team. This isn't the one riding into Knoxville with Diego Pavia, Jerry Kill, and Tim Beck. No, they're the 3-6 New Mexico State team that ranks 108th in success rate. They average just over 20. They average under 22 points a game. When you look at maybe like ingredients for the upset, it's hard to find an area that New Mexico State could take advantage of. They're 116th nationally with 19 touchdown passes allowed. So Joey Aguilar is probably warming up for what's going to be a pretty successful weekend against New Mexico State. So, Mike, I know this is boring, but I think this is kind of the case for this game. Tennessee should be able to pick the final score here. They could probably score as much as they want. get the backup some work, empty the bench, get everybody some reps before you get down to Florida and Vanderbilt. It's one of those kind of games. If this game is close, something has gone very wrong for Tennessee. So I like Tennessee big. I think they put on a show with Aguilar and these receivers. I like Tennessee 52, New Mexico State 10.
It's kind of sad, though, isn't it, Stephen, that New Mexico State's got some better defensive numbers than Tennessee? I mean, I guess I just got to get used to that. But Tennessee's defense, the statistically are just horrible. You know what?
Man, I guess that's a good thing. New Mexico State playing in Conference USA certainly helps those numbers. That's probably the worst FBS conference this year. I will tell you, Mike, New Mexico State has had some trouble in the offensive line this year. So thinking about that Tennessee pass rush, probably going to be a long day for Logan Fife and the New Mexico State offense. So I think really, Mike, this should be an easy win for Tennessee. If it's close, then something has gone horribly wrong.
Ashley Schaefer says, did this team beat UCLA?
That was New Mexico.
Okay.
New Mexico State's wins, I was trying to pull it up here to make sure I had it right. They have defeated Bryant, Tulsa, and Sam Houston this year.
Okay, so somehow I missed those games, believe it or not. You know what?
You weren't watching New Mexico State, Kennesaw State like I was last weekend? I know you're. Oh, that's right. You're a MAC guy. That's right.
I would have, but my YouTube TVs prevents me from watching such games. You know what?
Right. So that's right. So you're probably like raging on Tuesday and Wednesday nights. You can't watch the MAC games, right?
I am, and you know, I'm not giving another $1 to ESPN and YouTube TV because I'm saving all my money, Stephen, for Hollow Socks. Go check them out. Boom! We got some great Hollow Socks for you guys. Go check them out, hollowsocks.com. There's a link in the show notes. 50% off for the cousins right now. They got a deal. You buy 3 pairs, you get 3 pairs for free. You can't beat it. These are compression socks. Boy, do they feel snug going on. And then the next thing I know, Stephen, I'm like, man, am I even wearing socks? I mean, they're that comfortable. It's getting cold out. You need these compression socks to keep you warm this holiday season. And maybe you want to give a gift to a friend or a loved one, or just get a gift for yourself. Go check them out. hollowsocks.com. Again, 50% off for all the cousins right now. If you go over to Hollow Socks, you can't beat it.
Mike, that could be a very valuable resource, especially like you said, as the weather turns cold and you're going to one of these games, bowl games coming up. So you can't, got to make sure your feet stay warm. So definitely our friends over at Hollow Socks can hook you up.
And I hear it might be a little cool, Stephen, in old Baton Rouge. So for the Golden Boot battle, for the Golden Boot, I love that, it seems like these guys are always battling late in the season. We got another showdown here. Arkansas on the road at LSU. LSU favored by 5.5 points. The over-under is 56.5 total points. 12:45 Eastern kick on the SEC Network. Stephen, what do you think? The interim bowl here. And LSU does not like playing early in the day. So we'll see how that affects them. What's your thoughts on this one?
Mike, it is the Motivation Bowl. Who wants it more? Sleepy early start, 2 interim coaches, 2 teams having disappointing seasons, but also maybe some desperation to finish out the year on a high note. So there are some interesting storylines for this one, Mike. And when you look at just the matchups, I think the first one that jumps out to you is Arkansas can't stop anybody, but LSU can't score at anybody. They are just on opposite ends. I mean, LSU is averaging less than 20 points a game in SEC play. Arkansas is giving up almost 40. So I just can Arkansas get some stops against an offense that's not doing very much? What does LSU's offense look like? Is it Nussmeier? Is it Michael Van Buren? We saw Harlem Berry pop off a big run against Alabama last week. does he have a good game against this Arkansas defense that's really struggling? So, and also, Mike, when you think about this LSU offense, one of the biggest problems has been the offensive line. Well, Arkansas is not very good against the rush, and outside of Quincy Rhodes, they've had trouble generating a pass rush. So I am just fascinated by this matchup because they can't score, they can't stop anybody. Who wins out?
If only we could combine these teams, right, Stephen? Arkansas offense, LSU deep. We might have a national championship contender here. You know what?
We certainly would have a team that's bowl eligible, right? I mean, come on, man. I mean, LSU's defense is good, and this Arkansas offense can score. I mean, they put up over 40 points against Texas A&M. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much that this matchup will not make. There's nothing about this matchup that makes sense on paper, and I can't wait to see if Arkansas's defense if Arkansas's defense suddenly becomes a juggernaut on Saturday. That speaks to some really bad problems for the LSU offense.
Yeah, and there's unknowns here that would certainly make calling this game much easier. Like if we knew Taylon Green. Now Bobby Petrino says, hey, he was just dealing with some nicks. He was asked, can you provide specifics? He said, yeah, some nicks, but he's good. So again, who the heck knows? But clearly, I think in the recent games that I've seen Taylon Green, he looked, like banged up, I guess is the best way to say it. Now he's still out there. He's still gutting it out. I hope he's 100%. But again, if I knew that would give me a little bit more confidence in Arkansas. Meanwhile, LSU, who knows with Garrett Nussmeier? He got benched last week. Now they're bringing Michael Van Buren. And I certainly think Garrett Nussmeier gives you an edge when it comes to, just his knowledge, his how long he's been playing. He's just, he's got a lot. I know it's easy to sit here and be like, well, what the hell? He's not making the plays. Well, I think he really helps everybody on the field, get lined up, things of that nature, and just identifying what the defense is trying to do. But meanwhile, Michael Van Buren is a much better runner. And if they can't protect, maybe you'd rather have a mobile guy regardless. So there's a lot of variables here just with the quarterbacks for each of these teams that makes this game so hard to predict.
Yeah, it really does. And, we talked earlier this offseason about Taylon Green and some NFL draft stock. Well, if you go out and put up a good performance against LSU's defense, you talk about improving your stock. I mean, last year, LSU held him to -10 rushing yards. So, this Saturday, is he able to make some of those plays? Like you mentioned, he was banged up at the end of the Mississippi State game. So what level that he's playing at, but also, just the fact that we're sitting here in November and saying Garrett Nussmeier may not play the bulk of the snaps on Saturday, and it's not due to injury, it's due to performance, just is mind-boggling to me, just of where this LSU offense is this season. And I think you're right about, it's like some of those intangible things. He's been in the SEC for a lot longer than Michael Van Buren. He's seen it, he's done it. Arkansas can throw some things out there. He's able to adjust, especially with an inexperienced offensive line, like having a quarterback who can point out maybe where pressure is coming from is super valuable. But you're also right that Van Buren's mobility could be a huge asset because, LSU's offensive line is just struggling. So there's a lot like quarterback related that I am watching here. And also LSU has had some issues against mobile quarterbacks this year. I mean, Marcel Reed, Chambliss, Pavia. I know the stats from last year and Taylon Green weren't great on the ground against LSU, but you're looking at that, you're looking at motivation and saying, if Taylon Green is healthy and he puts together a good performance, this feels like a game Arkansas could go on the road and win, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And it kind of piggybacks off something I was going to ask you. I didn't even really think about Taylon Green, factoring him into this, but certainly you have to because he's such a dangerous runner back there. But which team in this spot do you have more confidence running the football? Is it Arkansas, who they are much better at running the football, but they're going up against a much tougher defense? Meanwhile, LSU struggles to run the football, but they're going up against a weak defense. So, it's kind of the same dance we're doing here. But which team do you have more confidence in to run the football in this matchup?
Is it fair to say Arkansas?
I mean, perhaps, yeah.
I mean, I just think watching all of the LSU games this year, even against like Southeastern Louisiana, they had 135 yards. Louisiana Tech 128. It's like those defenses they should have been able to impose their will on. And I do think it, really impressed with like Harlem Berry at times this year. If he has like a breakout kind of game, it's got to be this Saturday because the Arkansas defense is so bad. But it's almost like I'm thinking Taylor Green plus Mike Washington. Maybe it's not a ton of yards. It's a lot of hard-earned yards, but just based upon track record, I think you kind of got to lean Arkansas there.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, I know this is like pie in the sky, unlikely to happen, but hey, 3 weeks ago we had Mark Stoops run out of town, right? What if Arkansas finds a way to win here? Texas, coming off a tough loss of Georgia, perhaps, again, we haven't even got to that, so I'm just kind of imagining if Texas loses let's say a heartbreaker to Georgia and they fall in the playoff. Now, I don't think Texas is even eliminated with a loss at Georgia, but they may be, or even if it's once, I don't know, if it's lopsided, maybe they are. And then Missouri, God, they look so pitiful. What if Missouri loses a game or two down the stretch? Is it insane to predict Arkansas beating LSU, Texas, and Missouri to close? I mean, imagine that the momentum they could possibly have going into the offseason.
I think it's probably tough to ask them to run the table, Mike, but can they win a couple games in that stretch? I think they could win Saturday. I mean, we'll see about Missouri. I think they could win a couple. So to answer your question, it's almost like, yeah, they could build some momentum, but I'm also thinking, man, if we could get Saban back at LSU, we get Urban back at Florida, let's get Petrino back at Arkansas. Like I'm looking at that stretch and going, if they could go 5-7, can we make it happen and get all these, let's run the clock back a little bit and get all the guys back in the league, right?
They'd be the best 5-7 team in the nation, Steven. You know what?
Man, at least they'd be fun on offense. The headlines, Petrino rides again. Man.
All right. So that being said, who do you got winning this one?
Mike, it's tough. It's tough to figure out motivation and who wants it more. And, we've talked about the quarterback situation. I trust Taylor Green quite a bit. I like the timing for Arkansas. It's off the bye week, an LSU team that is fading a bit. The problem is this series has been 4 of the last 5 have been decided by one score. Arkansas just can't get stops, though. So, Mike, I am going to take LSU in a close one. I am going to take LSU to get over the 30-point mark, 31-27. I think LSU beats Arkansas on Saturday.
How many times have they scored 31? 1. Okay, so for the second time.
Yeah,
interesting.
Should say against a power conference opponent or an FBS opponent. Yeah, that I just think Arkansas's defense is so generous at giving up yards and points. There's no fix in the season, and LSU can do enough at home, whether it's Nussmeier or Van Buren, combined with a defense that is still playing at a high level. We saw that on Saturday. I think it's enough to get a close win.
Okay. All right, how about this one, Steven? Another Southeastern Conference battle. We got South Carolina at Texas A&M. The Aggies favored by 18.5 points at home. Over-unders 47.5, so potentially not a lot of points projected to be scored in this one. Noon Eastern, nationally televised on ESPN. Who do you got in the ball game?
Mike, I want to talk about the stakes for this game for Texas A&M, because if they win this game with Samford next week, they will be 11-0 going into the game against Texas. So you can see that if they win these next 2, they're a lock to make the playoff. You can't keep an 11-1 or a Texas A&M team that's going to the SEC championship out of the playoff. For South Carolina, there is still a chance to get to a bowl game. 3-6. Can they run the table? I think Coastal Carolina and Clemson are gettable. This is the hardest one, though. It would take a massive, massive upset to knock off Texas A&M. There is also the revenge factor for Texas A&M from losing last season. So just thinking about all of that, and all of the motivation should be on the Texas A&M sideline. You also look at what's new for South Carolina. Coming off the bye week, they've got a coaching change, a new offensive coordinator in Mike Furry. is there anything they can do to maybe catch Texas A&M off guard a little bit? Do they throw some things out there that A&M didn't prepare for? There's like the element of surprise here for South Carolina. The problem I think is, even if you're able to do some different things schematically, this is a South Carolina offense that just doesn't match up well. Like if you just go down the list here, there's just mismatches everywhere. I mean, A&M's had some trouble at times stopping the run. South Carolina really doesn't run it well. A&M's got one of the better pass defenses. Third downs. I mean, A&M's defense has been unbelievable on third downs this season, and South Carolina really struggles to convert them because they're in third and long. So, I think if South Carolina is going to win this game, it's got to be a Lenoris Sellers kind of day. He has just got to have the Superman 300, 400-yard kind of performance to pick up this team and carry it to the finish line. That kind of seems unlikely, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what he did. I don't remember the yardage exactly last season, but he had, by my count, something like 8 sacks that should have been credited to A&M, but he broke the tackles, made the play. So, yeah, we're gonna need a heroic performance like that just to perhaps make us a competitive ball game.
And thinking about that Clemson game at the end of the year too, all the broken yardage, broken tackles converted into yardage. He had 350 total yards against Texas A&M last year. He might need more than that on Saturday for South Carolina to pull off the upset. I think maybe the element of surprise helps this offense early, but I think when the game settles in, I think it's going to be hard for the offense for South Carolina to keep pace.
Yeah, unless we got some new wrinkles here, Stephen. Without Shula, maybe it opens everything up. I think all that's kind of overrated, but who knows? I mean, if I'm a Gamecock, that's kind of my wild card, and maybe we could pull some Beamer ball. Of course, it's looking like Elko ball is more proficient, with the fake punts, punt return against LSU. I think even A&M's better on special teams in Carolina.
That's the hard part too. I mean, that's the hard part for South Carolina, but also the opportunity for Texas A&M, because if you just think about where this team could go, I mean, there's not a ton of weaknesses on this team for Texas A&M. And so like that added dimension of having good special teams to where you can convert a fake punt, maybe you block a punt, you get a punt return, like A&M could just beat you so many ways. And that includes the offense too, Mike. I mean, South Carolina's defense, I think they can win some battles on Saturday, but I think asking them to hold up for 4 quarters is going to be hard. I mean, A&M has been over 30 points in 8 of their 9 contests this year. South Carolina's 14th in the SEC against the run. That's bad news against this A&M front and rushing attack. Now, South Carolina is 5th in the SEC in pass efficiency defense. So maybe you bend a little bit, but you don't break. You hold up on third downs. You hold up in the red zone. Don't give up touchdowns. And you make it a lower possession kind of game. And maybe that helps South Carolina keep this one close into the 4th quarter.
Mm-hmm. All right. So who you got winning?
Mike, I think it's hard to make a scenario for South Carolina to win this game. Just too many advantages for Texas A&M, and the motivation to finish the job, get a little bit closer to the SEC championship and a spot in the college football playoff. So unless there's a bunch of Beamer ball, a heroic performance from Sellers, I like Texas A&M to win. I do think that South Carolina at least gets a cover here. I like A&M 34, South Carolina 17. I think 19 to 20 points is quite a lot in the SEC this year for a spread.
Yeah, particularly if A&M is not playing their starters late in the game.
Keeping them fresh for the
Sanford.
Sanford. It's funny you bring that up, because Ohio State, if you look at their snap count, has played a low snap count this season, largely to keep guys fresh for the playoff run. So just thinking about that, maybe in some of these teams, do we see like a lower possession ball control kind of game to say, hey, we got to keep guys fresh for Texas and the playoff and SEC championship potentially?
Yeah. So, or you can read that into Ohio State soft. That's how I take it. All right, let's get into who's not soft over here, Stephen, and that's them Ole Miss Rebels. hosting Florida Gators in the Lane Kiffin Bowl. Rebels favored by 15.5 points. The over-under's 53.5 total points. 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, nationally televised on ESPN. Who do you like here, Stephen?
Mike, you said it best. It is the Lane Kiffin Bowl. Not only is it Lane Kiffin and Florida's interest, maybe Lane is doing a little scouting in this game, seeing what Florida's got on the roster. Maybe it helps him make his decision a little bit. Maybe he's doing some portal scouting to get DJ Lagway to Oxford next year and Cam Coleman to catch touchdowns for him. I'm just having some fun, Mike, because the reality of this is Ole Miss is 9-1. They are, I think, one win away from the college football playoff, because I think if you win this game and you're 10-1, absent some kind of crazy scenario, Ole Miss is probably safe to make the college football playoff. So I think, given the fact that Mississippi State is a couple weeks away and it's not the next game, that helps Ole Miss. They shouldn't overlook Florida. And there's also the element of finish the job. They came to the doorstep last year and they didn't do it. And they give Florida and Oxford a chance to just take care of business and get a step closer to the playoffs. So all the motivation is on the Ole Miss sideline, and especially after we saw the Florida performance last week. I hate to say the word quit, Mike, but there was a lot of concern from what I saw in the second half. Now, maybe they reset this week and they get motivated for this trip to Oxford, but I wonder about the fight left in this Florida team. And so with all that being said, it really feels like everything here favors Ole Miss on Saturday. Is that fair?
Not according to the coaching odds that I just saw, Steve. That's the only edge I can find for the Gators in this matchup. But yeah, no, and I don't even know if you've seen this, but this is pretty weird. But even interim coach Billy Gonzalez was asked multiple Lane Kiffin questions during his press conference, like, "Hey, how do you think Kiffin will fit in as the next coach?" and things of that nature. So, I mean, you could say it's a distraction for Ole Miss. It's equally, if not bigger, distraction for Florida, because I don't think any of those coaches or players know their status next year in Gainesville. So, yeah, I mean, this is the distraction bowl, if nothing else. But yeah, unless we get flawless DJ Lagway, unless we get some weapons to emerge, which I don't know how that's possible because all their main guys are banged up or out for the year. On the perimeter, I'm talking about. But like you said, with the PrizePicks, we need Jaden Ball to take over. We need our defense to suffocate. We got to force Trinidad to beat us deep, because that's kind of like the lone weakness I see in his game. But that is just asking a ton, particularly when this team essentially cost you a playoff bid last year. I know Kentucky was kind of more at fault for causing Ole Miss to lose it, but Florida, same deal. I mean, that was equally, if not worse, a loss, because it was all there in front for Ole Miss. But yeah, I mean, I'm really struggling to see any sign for Florida other than this is just the SEC, and what happens one week not necessarily indicative of what's going to happen the next week. I do think Florida will give them a game, but it's very difficult to predict that they're going to win this one.
Close games have kind of been the theme. It feels like everybody's kind of bunched together. I do wonder if some of that starts to separate a bit as we come down the stretch and like what two teams have to play for and all that. I think if you want to make the case for Florida to win this game, I think it starts with there's a motivation factor for DJ Lagway. Like last week was just, like Nussmeier, like to be benched. It's almost like mind boggling back to the preseason. So maybe there's some motivation to get back on track, albeit the skill talent's pretty shorthanded. Florida has been under 300 yards in back-to-back games, and that can't happen on Saturday. So I think the path is like you get a motivated Lagway, but you're running the ball. Jaden Ball has a huge game. Ole Miss is 13th in the SEC against the run. Maybe you can shorten this game. You're able to let Ole Miss drive, but you hold them to 3 points instead of 7. and you make it a 4-quarter game, especially if maybe you can frustrate Ole Miss and they start to panic a little bit. That would be my path for an upset for Florida. I think if you're Ole Miss, you probably watch that game against Kentucky and think, if we can get off to a fast start, we can put these guys away. Because what happened at Kentucky, they could fold again. And so I think if I'm Ole Miss, get ahead early. Don't let Florida hang around. And that's Trinidad Chambliss and these receivers and Keywan Lacey getting going. The first kind of half of the season, it felt like Florida's defense was holding teams under 400 yards or so, but they've been giving up a little bit more recently. So there's plenty of room here for Ole Miss, I think, to operate. And like I said, I think how the first quarter goes could kind of dictate the rest of the game. If it's close, I think maybe Florida can turn it into a 4-quarter game. If not, if Ole Miss is ahead, it's kind of tough to see a path here for the Gators.
And would you put any stock into this, Stephen? I'm just thinking out loud here, but in this portal era, this NIL era, I think there's going to be a lot of people watching, obviously, Florida's roster for, guys that they're interested in. And I think a lot of coaches will probably really key in on these last couple games when they're seemingly I believe if Florida wins out, they can go to a bowl game. So I don't want to say there's nothing to play for, but not championship aspirations, but basically they'll be viewing who quits, or however you want to say it, who strains, who doesn't, and who's out there laying their ass on the line. I think that if I'm a player, if you have good counsel, they're telling them, it could be literally anybody on Florida's roster right now that's available, but it could be the difference between you getting a very lucrative offer and not getting one in the transfer portal. I think that would be quite the motivator for me. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's spot on because, we joked about it on the Monday show, Mike, but everybody's a free agent, whether you're a player, whether you're a coach, you're starting to think about next year, like, what are you putting on tape? What's your motivation level? Well, the motivation level ought to be, if my future isn't here, it's over here. And it's because, I'm able to play well. I don't think you want to put a bunch of, iffy performances on the tape the next couple weeks and show that to for NIL purposes. I think that would certainly hurt. So I do think like individual motivation is there. If I'm Florida, the team motivation's got to be that last week was just so bad. And that can't be the team that we finished this year with. Like, we still got a chance to go to a bowl game. Let's go to Oxford. Let's fight. And let's maybe ruin the Ole Miss season, because if they ruin it, helps the chances of Lane Kiffin going to Gainesville, because you could interview him earlier before that for the playoff. So
right. All right. So all being said, Stephen, who you got winning?
Mike, I don't think Ole Miss is going to make the same mistake it did last year. I think they're here to finish the job. And I think given that, and given the questions about Florida motivation, what do they have in the tank? Do I think they could cover? Yeah, 15, 16 points is quite a lot. But I'm going to take Ole Miss, Mike, 34-17. I think they finish the job, finish the stretch out here on a high note, and get to Mississippi State with a 10-1 record and be in great shape to make the college football playoff.
Well, Stephen, speaking of Mississippi State, they got a ball game on the road this weekend at Missouri. Missouri's favored by 7.5 points at home. Final home game of the season for Missouri. The over-under's 51.5 total points. This game is the late game on SEC Network, 7:45 Eastern. SEC Network. Mississippi State needs another win to get to a bowl game. Missouri, where's the motivation after the playoff odds have been eliminated? What's your thoughts on this one?
I think motivation is kind of the big question here. If you're Mississippi State and you're looking at your schedule, you see the 5 in the win column. You got to get Missouri. You got to get Ole Miss to get to a bowl game. In theory, this one's probably a little bit easier. Having the rivalry game at your place, it certainly adds some extra intrigue to it. But I think if I want to get the 6, I think Missouri's probably the easier path for Mississippi State. And then on the other side, if you're Missouri, this is your last home game of the season. Send a lot of these seniors, maybe some guys jump into the NFL. send them out on a high note. I mean, this Missouri team has been, I think, 5-2 at home this year, 2 losses to top 10 teams. There's no shame in that at all. But given the way the Texas A&M game played out, if you're Missouri, can you refocus and get ready for this game against Mississippi State? Because it is not a gimme by any stretch of the imagination. I think Missouri is going to get a very, I hate to use this word, motivated Mississippi State team. So just thinking about like, where is Missouri? Very motivated Mississippi State. All of those things play into the count here, Mike. But I think the one matchup that I'm watching is the Mississippi State offensive line against the Missouri defensive front, because they're going to have to protect, whether it's Chapin, whether it's Kamario Taylor. Missouri has 24 sacks this year. They're 5th in the SEC in rush defense. They've been very difficult to run on this year. And so if I'm Jeff Lebby and I'm looking at these matchups, you got to find some ways to block this Missouri front, because if you can do that, you open up some plays downfield. You got to get Fluff Bothwell going. So it feels like there's a lot of pressure here on Mississippi State's line of scrimmage to hold up offensively and defensively to have a shot to win this game.
Yeah, and is there a chance, Stephen, that we're looking at the wrong team when it comes to motivation? Because I think it's easy to look at Missouri, tough loss. They've already made the bowl. But, Mississippi State, that was a pretty pathetic showing last week by themselves. Again, similar, playing an elite team, playing at home. But maybe Mississippi State is kind of running out of gas. I think that would be a big concern of mine and heading into this matchup. What's your thought? And they're even kind of, I don't know if uncertain is the right word, but they're in a little bit of a quarterback situation themselves with Blake Chapin, who's not playing great. He's not playing horribly, but he's not playing great. And then we got Kamario Taylor, the true freshman. That's got to be a difficult edge to walk if you're Jeff Lebby of who to give the snaps to.
I think the other problem here is the injuries to the offensive line. I mean, they've had some guys banged up. Albert Reese was out against Georgia. So maybe the best way to look at this is last week was kind of one of the first times that this Mississippi State team was blown out. The Texas A&M game was close early, and then A&M pulled away. But they had been punching teams. They went toe-to-toe with Texas. They went toe-to-toe with Tennessee. Last week was kind of the first outlier this season. So I guess the question is it a start of a trend? Are they out of steam, like you said, or is it an outliner? I'm kind of banking that they may have a little bit left in the tank. I am worried about those offensive line injuries. What's the status? Like you said, Blake Chapin got banged up, trying to figure out if it's Chapin or Taylor. There's a lot of questions here, but I also think just given the way the season has gone, they've kind of rebounded and punched a lot of teams ahead of them in the rankings and the standings. So I'm probably going to hold on the idea that they've kind of packed it in for the year, or question motivation, I guess.
How many rushing yards do you think Mississippi State needs to limit Missouri to win this game?
That's a great question, because I think that's the biggest, and we talked about the offensive line for Mississippi State. But Mike, Mississippi State is 15th in the SEC in rush defense, 130th nationally in success rate against the run. I tell you that because here comes Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. I mean, it is going to be very difficult, just given the setup for Missouri's offense, but also Georgia over 300 yards, Arkansas 239. So I think if I'm Mississippi State, I've got to find a way to hold these guys at least under 200. They had 200 last week and they didn't win. This game feels like it's going to be a lot closer. But if I'm Mississippi State, you've got to find a way at least to keep them under 200, probably preferably closer to 150, and find ways to get Zollers in sort of obvious passing situations. Don't let them dictate first, second down, and stay in a very high success rate offensively.
Yeah, and you mentioned Zollers. I did want to ask you, what's your confidence level that he bounces back? And because he had a horrible performance last showing against A&M. Now, I don't know how much that's on him, but that was hopefully that'll be the outlier if I'm a Missouri fan.
I think he's going to bounce back this Saturday. Is bounce back 300 yards? Is it a couple touchdowns? It's hard to put a number on it, but I suspect he will complete more than 7 passes, especially against this defense that has kind of been trending down over the kind of second half of the season. So I expect a bounce back performance, but yeah, I guess the question, like, what's the level of bounce back? It's probably not like all SEC caliber play, but it's solid though.
How much do you think it hurts Missouri's plan on offense that Zollers is not the running threat that Bo Prabula was, that Brady Cook was? And even if, he's on a statue back there, he can run, but I don't think it's very wise of Missouri to run him, considering what's behind the true freshman is a bunch of walk-ons. You really don't want to go in the last couple games of the season with walk-on quarterbacks, obviously. So I can't imagine many design runs being called here.
I totally agree, Mike. I think if I was Drinkowitz and Kirby Moore, I'd be instructing Zollers every time you get out of the pocket, go out of bounds or slide or fall down. Do not take any unnecessary hits, because you're right. I mean, the quarterback depth for this team has been depleted. Sam Horn earlier this season and Bo Prabula. So I do think it does change the way you have to defend. Our mobile quarterbacks can really completely change the way that you have to defend the field. And so it's a little bit easier for Mississippi State knowing that, hey, they don't have a lot of depth at quarterback. Maybe he's not as good of a runner as Prabula. Still think, though, that the box is going to be the biggest thing here, because you got Hardy and Roberts, and they're going to come downhill. And just seeing the way that they ran against Georgia, to me, that's the bigger challenge for Mississippi State here.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, no more delay. Who do you got winning?
Mike, I think Missouri still has plenty of motivation, but Mississippi State is also pretty desperate. That being said, I think the team that's better in the trenches wins out. And I think Missouri, Hardy, Roberts, they have a good day. Also think the Missouri pass rush gets after Shapen or Taylor. I'm going to take Mississippi State, though, to cover. I'm going to give me Missouri 27, Mississippi State 24.
Okay. Now we're to the highlight games here, Stephen. Let's do Oklahoma at Alabama. Separation Saturday starts here in Tuscaloosa as the Crimson Tide favored by 5.5 points, with the over-under set at 46.5 total points. 3:30 Eastern, 2:30 Central, nationally televised on ABC. Oklahoma ran away with this one last season, but that was old Jalen Milroe's fault, if you ask Tide fans, and he's long gone, of course. So what do you like in this matchup, Stephen?
Mike, is revenge in the air this week? Last week, as you correctly kind of assessed, maybe it was like a weekend that could see some upsets. We didn't. But that being said, Alabama out for revenge against Oklahoma. There is also the stakes for the SEC championship game. There's also the college football playoff. If you're Alabama, you win this one, you beat Eastern Illinois, you're at 10 wins, you're probably making the playoff given that schedule. If you're on the other side, Oklahoma, 7-2. We joked about it earlier, spot the ball. You got a chance to make the playoff here if you go into Tuscaloosa and win. I think there are scenarios at 9-3 they could get in. But don't leave it up to the committee. Just beat Alabama if you're Oklahoma and play your way into it. Also, the Heisman, Ty Simpson, a chance against maybe one of the best, certainly one of the best defenses in the country, to make a statement in the Heisman race, especially with Fernando Mendoza of Indiana and Julian Sayin playing lesser opponents this week. So the matchup that I think is the marquee one has got to be Ty Simpson against that Oklahoma defense. I mean, the defensive line for the Sooners, maybe the best in college football. We'll see about the status of our Mason Thomas, but Simpson has delivered time and time again this year. He is the Alabama offense because they haven't been able to run the ball. And just thinking about how well he's navigated like messy pockets this year. He's good at kind of feeling the rush, being able to put the ball into tight windows. How does Alabama's offensive line hold up? And then if the rush does get there, how does Simpson navigate that? maybe hit some big plays? Or does Oklahoma's pass rush just win like it did against Tennessee, creating pressure? Maybe it creates a turnover. Oklahoma doesn't give up much on the ground. Alabama, you have to at least try to have some balance here. But the matchup, Mike, of Oklahoma's defensive line versus Ty Simpson, this by far is one of my probably the matchup I am anticipated to see the most this weekend.
Yeah, and there's been so much made about Alabama's inability to run the football. But what is your thoughts on Oklahoma's ability to run the football against Alabama? Because I think that'll be key to this matchup.
Yeah, I think so too. We have seen, Alabama's defense, whether it was Castellanos of Florida State in the opener, going back to Jackson Arnold last season, they've had some trouble with mobile quarterbacks. So you could see John Mateer, maybe his legs come into play, but Xavier Robinson, back-to-back 100-yard efforts. So there's a little bit more balance there for Oklahoma now starting to come in. Mateer, obviously, the way he's going to have to carry this offense, but maybe there's a little bit more help. Maybe your offensive line starting to come together. I do think the secondary of Alabama standout group. How does Mateer make some plays here? I also think Alabama's done a good job of adjusting sometimes as the game goes on. Like we saw this, like they stepped up last week against LSU, other times this season. So interested to see the early punches and then how these teams adjust on Saturday.
Who do you think has the coaching edge when specifically just thinking about Alabama on offense with DeBoring and Grubb and Oklahoma defense, Brent Venables? Who do you think's got the edge there?
Oh man, that's like good on good toss up.
Right.
Wouldn't you have to at least say maybe a slight lean to Venables, but not by much though.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially given last year. Now, I know Grubb was not there, but I think that's fair to say. But not by a wide margin, like you said. So that'll be interesting to see here. Do you think if Alabama wins this game because of Ty Simpson, do you think he'll be a Heisman finalist?
I think he will be. I think he should be. I think even if Alabama falls short here, but they win the next two, I think he should absolutely be in New York. And I think you could look at a couple numbers. It's the lack of mistakes. It's delivering in the clutch against high-profile opponents. It's the accuracy. It's the fact that he is the Alabama offense. There is a lot of factors that I think check in his favor. So a good performance here probably solidifies a trip to New York for the Heisman Trophy, but I think he can get there without that too, just given the way he's played this season.
Mm-hmm. And Ryan Grubb's been the latest, Stephen, among all these offensive coaches that have noted, hey, we got to watch out for these pesky Sooners. We're changing all our signals because we got Venables coming in here. So, the fact that so many of these teams have to go to these lengths when they face the Sooners, how much of it is mind games? How much of it, how much does that possibly derail your preparation for facing Oklahoma because you're worried about this, that, and the other? There's just so many games within a game here for this matchup, don't you think?
I think so. I think some of this is gamesmanship to some extent. It's making, if you're Oklahoma, you want to add some doubt to Alabama, make them maybe spend some time on changing some signals. If you're Alabama, you want to put out there that, oh yeah, we are changing everything, make Oklahoma self-doubt at scouting too. So I do think there is some gamesmanship, Mike, but also this has been a thing going back to Clemson. And I'm not saying this is like rule breaking stuff. It's just that Brent Venables and his staff seem to be very good at deciphering what other teams are doing. So I'll be interested to see if Alabama maybe huddles, how they operate on offense, maybe do some things at the line of scrimmage differently to kind of throw Oklahoma off. There's something there in this matchup for sure.
Hold on. Sorry, Steven. StreamYard's been giving me issues. So talk with the cousins for about 5 seconds. I'll be right back.
Yeah, Mike, I think one other matchup that we have to talk about on Saturday is going to be the Oklahoma's offense against the Alabama defense. We saw Mateer maybe in the second half against Tennessee kind of start to find his rhythm a little bit. There was we mentioned the back-to-back 100-yard efforts by Xavier Robinson. Alabama holding teams to about 19 points a game in SEC play. They've been good in the red zone. We mentioned the trouble that mobile quarterbacks have given them too, but also we should note, Mike, I think Oklahoma's defense is the best in the SEC, but also if you look at like Ole Miss, Arch Manning, teams have found the way to move the ball on this defense. So a lot of this comes back to, I think if you're Alabama, can you just manufacture enough of a rushing attack to stay out of third and longs? And I think if you're Oklahoma, you have to do that too. I don't think you want to be asking Mateer to say 3rd and 9, 3rd and 8, go out there and beat Alabama secondary.
Now, here's what I was trying to ask you before StreamYard crapped out on me. It's the second time it's done that this week. Get your act together, StreamYard. You're next on my list.
Those YouTube and ESPN people are taking over this now, right?
I'm concerned about it. I was going to say they're next on the list after those two. But, any surprise that the line's 5.5? Now, again, we should all be to the point now where we realize like that's not a prediction. They're just trying to get people to bet both sides of it essentially. But you got Alabama, right? Mighty Alabama. Everybody's got them in the playoff as a national championship contender, Heisman quarterback. And then here you got the lowly Sooners who've lost a couple games. Can they even compete in this ball game? Yet the spread's only 5.5, and it's at Alabama. Does that line surprise you at all?
Not really. I think because Oklahoma matches up so well. I think because their defense matches the strength of Alabama offensively, and also just think, if you're Alabama, and as much as, I think very highly of this team, if you keep playing close games and you get into these scenarios like the South Carolina game, the LSU game, there might be a week where things don't click in the fourth quarter or the second half. So I'm not surprised. I think the defense for Oklahoma can help the Sooners potentially cover that spread.
Mm-hmm. And then if the game comes down to a kick, which it very well could, who you favoring? It's almost got to be shorts there, Sandell, right?
Yeah, it's got to be, right? Alabama missed with that chip shot last week, so you got to go. You got to go Oklahoma with the edge on that one.
Okay, because a game like this, it could very well come down to that, don't you think?
100%. Points could be at a premium, and if you're Oklahoma, you kind of have to know, like once you get past the 50 and you start to get into range, right? That's like it changed the way you have to play third downs, maybe go for it on fourth down if you're Alabama and you don't have a lot of confidence in your kicker. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge advantage. Somebody that can bomb 50-yard field goals. Yeah.
And matchups like this, Stephen, we talked about the games within the games, but the middle 8, the 4 minutes before halftime, 4 minutes after, things of that will be critical. Clock management, timeout management. DeBoring, he's been burning a lot of timeouts early in the game. It's not hurt Alabama, but it could catch up to them at some point. I think this is, one decision here or there could very well determine this game. I think it goes down to the wire. Do you think that's fair to say?
I do, because I'm thinking about the Oklahoma-Texas game, and I thought about Venables mismanaged the end of that one. I think, was it last week, Alabama scored right before halftime against LSU. It feels like they've been, they can maximize those kind of situations maybe a little bit. I think some of the intangibles I might trust DeBoer on a little bit in this scenario.
Mm-hmm. All right, Stephen, moment of truth. Who wins this game? Alabama? Do they keep the march to the playoff alive, or do the Sooners reinsert themselves? They're already in the playoff discussion, but they're firmly in for the time being. If they go into Tuscaloosa and win, it may not be a better, more impressive win on the season if the Sooners can do that.
If Oklahoma wins this game, Mike, I think they can go to the playoff because I think they'll win out. I think they'll beat Missouri, and I think they'll beat LSU. So this game probably helps a lot to get to 10-2. Like I said, I still think 9-3 very much in play. Also, don't think we should assume that the most perfect scenarios are going to play out, right? We're due for some upsets, right? Oklahoma's defense matches up well against the Alabama offense. The Sooners can defensive line maybe get Simpson behind the sticks. They can get him sacked. There's a lot that Venables, I think, his defense can do. Alabama's +10 in turnover margin. Oklahoma's -5. So that's something to watch on Saturday. Turnovers, like you said, field goals, clock management. This game feels very tight to me. Sounds like the Black Hoodies making a return, right? Kalen DeBoer is 12-0 at home as Alabama's head coach. I'm going with the Crimson Tide, Mike. Give me Alabama 24, Oklahoma 20 in a close game that comes down to the wire. I think Ty Simpson maybe making a play or two in the fourth quarter is the difference.
I'm disappointed in you, Stephen. Not with the prediction, but just the fact you brought up that stupid hoodie. I want that to end like nothing else. ESPN's got graphics for it. They got people doing features on the damn hoodies. Apparently they got 6 on reserve. Those shenanigans. That's where, as I'm not a fan of the short shorts, I'm much bigger fan of the short shorts than I am black hoodie discussion. You know what?
What hoodie's worse, Kalen DeBoer or Bella Cheats over at North Carolina?
I mean, what shoelaces did Nick Saban have when he was winning all these national? Why don't we have that? It's like all this nonsense is stupid.
It's probably, I think I'd rather hear about the hoodie than, do you know Ryan Williams was 17? Do you remember Colt McCoy and Jordan Shipley were roommates?
That's true. They always find the dumbest thing. Yeah. That's almost as bad as Parent Cam.
Right. I forgot. Well, we haven't seen I guess we have seen that with Simpson this year.
We have. And I guarantee you where we're going to see it on Saturday, Stephen, is down in Athens with Cooper Manning Cam here. We got to see what old Lydia's up to, too. So shout out the Longhorns as they go on the road to Athens to face mighty Georgia. Georgia's favored by 5.5. How about that, Stephen? The two big games, both 5.5 point spreads. Over under 48.5 for Texas, Georgia. 7:30 Eastern, 6:30 Central, nationally televised on ABC. These teams met twice last year, Stephen. Once in the regular season, once in the SEC championship, and them dogs got it done each time. Does that change? On Saturday, Stephen, Georgia hosting Texas.
Mike, as much as I'm fired up for Alabama, Oklahoma, I think this game is probably equally high on my list of intrigue for Saturday, just because of the stakes. Georgia 2-0 against Texas last year and the way they did it. And also thinking about the playoff chase here. Texas, much like Oklahoma, 2 losses. Not a lot of margin for error, but close loss to Georgia, a win over Georgia, then you stay very much alive as we go down the stretch. So some motivation and some revenge for Texas, given those 2 losses last year, but also for Georgia, I mean, a chance to just keep building on what we've seen this year. Last week's win was very impressive. Kind of think this Georgia team is probably coming together at the right time. And that's probably bad news for Texas and everybody else on the schedule the rest of the way here. So the stakes are super, super high for both teams on Saturday. And of course, I think the matchup that everybody wants to see is Arch Manning against the Georgia defense. Texas offense does seem to be finding its stride a bit. I mean, they've been over 30 points in back-to-back games for the first time this season, over 400 yards back-to-back games for the first time this season too. We've seen Arch Manning do some things differently, short throws to Wingo out in space. Maybe they're finding something. They're getting healthier on the offensive line maybe too. So it feels like Arch, the game is slowing down for him, but he hasn't played particularly well on the road this year. You can also look at it and go, Georgia doesn't really have much of a pass rush. They also can give up some big plays downfield. So the matchup for Arch and Texas receivers, I think is interesting and potentially one they can take advantage of. I still think that this game goes back to the line of scrimmage for Texas. They gave up 13 sacks in the 2 meetings last year. We know Texas has had some issues running the ball. As good as Manning has played the last couple games, I don't think you want him dropping back 40 to 45 times in here. If you're one-dimensional, Georgia's going to win this game, and it's probably covering the spread. So I think for all the talk about Arch, He's got a chance to sort of rewrite some of the narratives. I still think offensive line rushing attack for Texas is the biggest key to this game.
Yeah, and I could have this completely wrong, but I saw the stat this morning. Texas rushing against Georgia last year in their 2 games. I want to say it was around 50 yards combined. Now, I could have that wrong, but yeah, that goes right to what you're saying. I know this is a different matchup, different year. I don't think Georgia's as good on defense, but I think Texas is far worse, I guess is the word, on offensive line. So, that'll be critical. But I think the other way I'm more interested in, just specifically for this matchup, is Georgia and their running game going up against Texas and their elite ability to stop the run, because I think the team that has the advantage there, I think that'll determine the winner. What's your thoughts on that?
I do too, because I think it's almost the same thing. If you're Texas, ask Gunnar Stockton to beat you out of 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10. I think if Georgia is 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3 all game, that's just trouble for Texas. So Texas has been very good up front this year. 159 yards. That's the most Texas has allowed in a game this season. Georgia, of course, coming off that 300-yard performance. They got healthy on the offensive line late this season too. But, I think for Texas, this matchup, for as much focus as on Arch and Georgia, there's still a ton of intrigue on the other side too, because Texas is one of the best defenses in the SEC. Michael Taft looks like he's going to be back on Saturday, so maybe some of the breakdowns in the secondary that we saw the last couple of weeks, maybe they're not there. I also think Georgia does a very, very good job of staying on schedule. With Mike Bobo and the efficiency they've been able to use, 14th in the country in success rate. So I think if you're Georgia, are you winning on early downs? Or if you're Texas, are you winning on early downs and keeping Georgia in 3rd and longs? And if they do that, then Texas defense has got a good chance to win this game for them and potentially pull off the upset.
I like this comment from Brodo, Georgia fan, Stephen. Texas lost to Florida. Refresh Mr. Brodo, Stephen. How did Georgia fare against Florida on a neutral field? Not in the swamp. I feel like it was a pretty close game, man.
Mike, it was a close game. It went down to the wire, right?
So, again, they got it done. So, in fairness to old Brodo. But, I think that says more about Florida and the talent they potentially have. But, and one game does not dictate another, if you've been watching college football for longer than a couple hours, I think you'd know that one game does not decide another. But I think it's to his point that he's trying to make is Texas should not be given the benefit of the doubt, but I think Georgia should be, given what they've accomplished this season, what Kirby's accomplished in his career, what Gunnar Stockton has done in critical situations. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Like, I know you are president of the Arch Manning fan club, but I think Georgia deserves the benefit of the doubt more than Texas. Now, that can change on Saturday, but I think that is, without a fair, that's a fair assessment.
100%. It's fair because of, just the 2 games last year. It kind of makes me wonder, does Kirby have Sark's number a bit here? But recent track record and also what's happened this season. Mike, you and I have talked about it. Texas didn't play particularly well against Ohio State. They didn't play well against Florida, Kentucky. 4th quarter overtime, they looked a lot better against Mississippi State. But you can't, if you're Texas, you can't fall. And this is the same thing that's true for Georgia. We've talked about slow starts. I don't know that I want to get off to a slow start on Saturday. I know these teams aren't trying, but it does feel like with the defenses here, a comeback might be a lot more challenging if you're one of these offenses and just given the way that they've played this season or kind of set up. Every week is its own season to some extent. So what happened last week, what happened the week before, you just never know on a Saturday in college football. And so I think recent history and all that, you give Georgia the benefit of the doubt. But if Texas is trending up, You can also make case Georgia's trending up. There's a lot of kind of factors we're going to find out on Saturday night.
Yeah. Are there any players individually outside of obviously the quarterbacks that you think could be huge X factors that determine the outcome of this game?
Mike, I think the two receivers, Branch and Wingo, because they have the ability in a tight game to take a 5-yard pass and turn it into a 40-yard touchdown. What about Ryan Niblett too? I mean, he's delivered punt return after big punt return for Texas this season. I'll be boring here and I'll say, also say Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, CJ Allen, like the dudes on defense. Can one of them maybe force a turnover, or there's a third down, there's a stop that swings the game? Like one of those studs on defense, do one of them show up in a big way on Saturday?
Bo says, what about fans throwing trash on the field? Oh, wait, this was in Athens. We don't got to worry about that. That is true. How about, the fact that it is in Athens, and you referenced Texas obviously had a lot of struggles on the road. Georgia, I would not say is at the very, very top. They're near the top, but not the very top, in my opinion, just my opinion, of home field advantages in college football. But for certain games like this, they are. So, it's going to be an insane environment. Do you think this will be the toughest environment Texas has played in this season, though?
Ooh, that's a good question. Florida, on the road, Ohio State, or Georgia? I mean, maybe because of the stakes of this game, early in the season, first game at Ohio State, you had a lot more margin for error. Being a night game, maybe I would go with that just because the stakes are super high here.
Now, from a Texas guy, though, sorry to cut you off, Stephen, I would say, well, that may be the case. However, I think the Swamp's a tougher environment personally, but again, that's just my opinion. If I'm a Texas fan, I sit here and say, well, hell, we've had 5 games, 4 true road games and 1 neutral site where we're prepared for whatever they throw at. We're battle tested, as it were. And yes, we lost the first 2, but we won the last 2, which none of the last 2 will compare to Athens, but I think they'll be ready. I don't think it'll phase them, if that makes sense. Does that make any sense?
I think they're certainly battle tested. I think that works in their favor. I also think for Arch to sort of go through the ups and downs this year and to say, I went on the road and played Ohio State. I went and played in Florida. Georgia's difficult too, but you've already checked off 2 difficult home environments. Like by now, later in the season, you should be a lot more comfortable. So I think if you're Georgia, you got to like the setup. But I think if you're Texas, you could walk in here with some confidence and say, look, the last couple of weeks, we're starting to get it going. We've played in these environments. I mean, Mississippi State was crazy, and we came back in the fourth quarter and overtime. Mike, I do think it is, you can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think Alabama's the only team that's been able to win in Athens since South Carolina did in 2019 in SEC play. I mean, if Kirby Smart doesn't lose to many teams in the SEC outside of Alabama in Athens.
Yeah, you got to have an elite coach like Will Muschamp to win in Athens. Trust me. So, yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Which coach or coaching staff is really the real question here. Which coaching staff do you have more faith in making in-game adjustments? Kirby Smart and the Dogs, or Sark in Texas?
This is probably recency bias, but I just have to go with Georgia this year. I mean, I just think they keep finding ways. We saw that they got down against Alabama. They came back. Some of the other matchups this year. Sark's been, I mean, obviously he's great too. We're talking like tier 1 coach with Smart and coaching staff, maybe slightly ahead.
Okay. No, I think that's absolutely fair. I don't have any more questions, Stephen. Who do you have winning this game? Is Georgia keep the train going, or does Texas reinsert themselves right? I know they're technically in the playoff field, but this one would maybe not cement it, but come pretty close to cementing the Longhorns in the college football playoff.
Mike, first of all, I think we're going to be in for a 4-quarter game. I think much like Oklahoma, Alabama, this one is going down to the wire. Couple things that I'm watching. I think number 1, the turnovers. Texas is +8, Georgia -2. And in a tight game, 1 or 2 mistakes could be pretty valuable here. I also think the trenches. I want to see Texas be able to find some success on the ground. I don't think you want to have, like I said, Arch throw it 50 times on Saturday night. I think both sides are going to win some battles here. I think there's a chance that, Manning plays well. He answers some of the narratives. I think people will also start to realize that, hey, Gunnar Stockton's also having a really good season too. And maybe he'll get some respect on Saturday night. Defensive game, but at home, 2-0 last year, Kirby Smart was against Texas. It's hard to pick against Georgia in this spot. So I think a tight game, 2 quarterbacks maybe land a punch or two, Stockton and Manning, but the trenches battle goes Georgia's way, home field. Give me Georgia 24, Texas 20.
Who are you, and what have you done with Steven Lassan? Pick against Arch Manning in Texas? Invasion of the Body Snatchers over here is what I had to guess, but
I got abducted last night.
No, I think that's a fair and reasonable take. I wonder though if I don't know. I'm sitting here thinking that what was key in these games last year was kind of some defensive playmakers for Georgia. And now those guys seem to be, not all, but mostly on Texas side. So I don't know. It's just something I was just thinking of. But let me ask you this, Stephen. So you got both the home teams winning in the big time matchups here. Oklahoma at Alabama, Texas at Georgia. You like the home teams. Which road team would surprise you the least if they won between Texas and Oklahoma?
This is a hard question to answer, Mike, because I actually think the percentage of both the underdogs winning are actually somewhat high. A spread under a touchdown. I guess I probably would go maybe lean Texas just a bit. Maybe because I do feel like the last couple games they have been sort of finding themselves. And also, I was thinking about this when we were talking about the home field. I do wonder if I'm Texas, I mean, isn't the pressure sort of off a little bit on Saturday night? Like first game of the year, it was like every throw for Arch was dissected down to the smallest degree. Now it's like we've got 2 losses. Yeah, our back's against the wall. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, but I mean, we're the underdog. If we lose this game and it's close, we're still in the playoff race. If we lose bad, we're not. But also given Georgia's track record at home, there is a ton of pressure there. So I to answer your question, I'd probably go Texas, but not much gap in my mind. I think both underdogs can win.
I just wanted to give you an avenue to pick Texas in something, Steven. So congratulations. You did it. And congratulations to you, Cousin Rick, for being such an amazing cousin. Just gave us a nice donation here, Steven. Shout out, Cousin Rick.
It's Texas A&M's biggest fan, Cousin Rick. Gig 'em, Aggies.
Thank you, Rick. Great show. Georgia, Alabama, and Aggies win. Beat the hell out of South Carolina. All right, so we've said all that, Stephen. Who is your John Mateer lock of the week?
I almost went with the Sooners to cover in Tuscaloosa, but I'm going to take Ole Miss, Mike. At some books, I think it's down to like 14 or so. So there might be some late money coming in on the Gators here, but I think Ole Miss gets it done. I think they can win and get a cover on Saturday night.
And then final thing, I always love to kind of look in your crystal ball, Stephen. If the games play out the way that you predict they will, what will be the Sunday storylines, biggest storylines in the Southeastern Conference if the games play out the way you just predicted?
Mike, I think number one, I think the conversation shifts to saying Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss are locks. It's for the college football playoff. And then I think the second conversation is if Oklahoma and Texas lose close, there's going to be an inferno on the internet of people complaining about, these 9-3 teams shouldn't be in the playoff mix. But if they lose close, they are still very much alive, and that requires winning out. It requires some other scenarios happen, but wouldn't bury Texas and Oklahoma if they lose this weekend, and it's close. That's the key. So I think that's the second conversation that we'll have Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, I can't wait to watch it. Stephen, again, For all the cousins that joined late, Steven's in the lead, so you may want to make note of his predictions. Root against him if you want the cousins to win. But Steven, again, cannot thank you enough, as always, for stopping by and dropping so much knowledge on us. Before you go, can you remind the cousins where to follow you and where to find your work?
Absolutely. You can follow me over on Twitter at Athlon Steven, Steven L CFB over on Facebook and Instagram. And you can read all my work over at athlonsports.com.
All right, Steven, thank you again. Enjoy the games this weekend. I know you will. Stay locked in, cousins. We'll be back here in just a little bit. 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central. I don't even know what time the show, even though it's the same time every day. Let you know where my headspace is at. 7 o'clock Eastern, 6 Central, mailbag, share, all that jazz, comment. Really helps the show. Doesn't cost you a thing, but we don't ask you for much, cousins. So if you could just give us that thumbs up, we'd greatly appreciate it. But until then, we'll see you in a couple hours. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hey, buddy, this beer's for you, Mike, and Cousin Shane. That SEC podcast loves the Pirate, and the Pirate loves that SEC podcast. Hail State.